Can you imagine a man who held the supreme military command of an entire empire and married the reigning emperor's own sister, wielding unparalleled power, influence? Yet, if you look back at his birth, he didn't even have a legal identity. Born out of wedlock, he spent his childhood doing the grueling work of herding sheep, treated like a dog, and relentlessly bullied by his half-brothers. As he grew slightly older, he became a lowly slave in a princess's estate, working as an attendant, hunching over to hold stirrups for nobles, mounting their horses. Once, a prisoner skilled in reading faces stared at him. For a long time, he said, "You have the face of nobility. You are destined to be a marquis." His response was to shake his head with a bitter smile, replying that, for a lowly slave like himself, just avoiding beatings was a blessing. And he wouldn't dare dream of becoming a marquis. However, history is unpredictable, and this slave would go on to defy his fate, becoming one of the most dazzling gods of war in all of Chinese history. He used his blade to brutally shatter 70-year myth of Xiongnu invincibility. Winning 7 out of 7 major campaigns, he relentlessly pushed the borders northward, forging the iron backbone of the Chinese nation. He also earned the absolute lifelong trust of the proud and domineering Emperor Wus, enjoying immense glory in life, and the ultimate honor in death, being buried beside the emperor's own mausoleum. He was Wei Qing, the Grand Marshal and General-in-Chief, and Marquis of Changping, the Han Dynasty. Before delving into his military record, we must understand the suffocating era he faced. Ever since Emperor Liu Bang was besieged by the Xiongnu army at Mount Baden, the Han Dynasty had bowed its head to this empire for 70 long years. During this agonizing period, the Han could only buy a fragile peace by sending innocent women into marriage alliances, paying massive tributes of gold and silver. Yet, this never satisfied the Xiongnu's insatiable greed. They continued to ride south every year to pillage and massacre, leaving the border citizens to wail in despair under their iron hooves. That is, until the young Emperor Wu ascended the throne. Sick of this humiliation, he furiously decided to fight back. However, his court trembled in fear, as the Xiongnu were entirely cavalry, striking like the wind, leading many to believe a Han victory was impossible, just as Emperor Wu desperately needed a sharp sword to pierce the darkness. Wei Qing stepped onto the historical stage, initially brought to court because his sister had won the emperor's favor. But make no mistake, his immortal legacy was not built on nepotism. It was forged through real, bloody achievements on the battlefield. In 129 BC, the Battle of Longcheng shocked the world. Emperor Wu launched a preemptive strike, sending 4 columns of 10,000 cavalry each. The results were mostly disastrous. General Gongsun Ao suffered a crushing defeat, losing 7,000 men, and Gongsun, he got lost in the desert, achieving nothing. Even the famous flying general had his army annihilated, with Li himself captured, barely escaping with his life. The entire court fell into despair, wondering if the Han could ever defeat the Xiongnu. But there was one column left, led by the rookie commander Wei Qing. Not only did he not retreat, he boldly led his lone army deep, directly destroying Longcheng, the sacred Xiongnu site for heavenly sacrifices, and executing 700 enemies. While 700 might seem insignificant in later, massive wars, in that dark era it was the Han Dynasty's first victory against the Xiongnu. With this blood-soaked triumph, Wei Qing loudly declared to the world that the Xiongnu bled just like anyone else, and Han soldiers could defeat them. This was only the beginning. In 127 BC, during the campaign to recover Heshuo, Wei Qing brilliantly employed flanking tactics to drive out the Xiongnu kings. He recaptured the long-lost Hetao region in one fell swoop, completely lifting the direct military threat to the Han capital, Chang'an. Overjoyed, Emperor Wu established Shufang commandery there, and granted Wei Qing the title of Marquis of Changqing for his peerless merit. Then, in 124 BC, Wei Qing led 30,000 elite cavalry on a massive long-distance night raid at Gaoque, descending like troops from heaven in the pitch black. They tightly surrounded the Xiongnu's wise king of the right. The foolish king, thinking the Han army was hundreds of miles away, was drunkenly embracing his concubines. Jolted awake, he barely escaped into the night with a few hundred cronies. In this single battle, Wei Qing captured over 15,000 Xiongnu men and women, along with millions of livestock. When the news reached Chang'an, an ecstatic Emperor Wu immediately sent an envoy to promote Wei Qing to general-in-chief on the spot, giving him command over all Han military forces. The crowning achievement came in 119 BC during the decisive Battle of Mobei, a battle that truly elevated him to godhood. Leading 50,000 elite cavalry, Wei Qing forced his way across the unforgiving desert. Facing the fully prepared main forces of the Xiongnu Chanyu, Wei Qing remained unfazed. He decisively ordered his heavily armored chariots to form a solid ring defense, which firmly halted the enemy's frenzied charges. Then, amidst a blinding sandstorm, he sent elite cavalry to execute a lethal double envelopment against the Chanyu. Terrified out of his wits, the Chanyu didn't even have time to mount a horse, fleeing for his life on a cart pulled by 6 mules. Wei Qing relentlessly pursued him all the way to Jiaoxin city, burned all the Xiongnu's hoarded supplies, and returned in triumph. 7 campaigns against the Xiongnu yielded 7 resounding victories. By recapturing Heshuo and winning at Mobei, Wei Qing forcefully pushed the northern borders, beating the Xiongnu so badly that they fled far away, leaving no royal court south. The desert. Through half a lifetime in the saddle, he washed away 70 years of blood, tears, and humiliation for the Han Dynasty. We often hear that a field general isn't bound by the sovereign's orders. Throughout history, highly decorated commanders often became arrogant and defiant, eventually bringing about their own tragic, violent ends. But Wei Qing was an absolute exception, not just an invincible commander. He was one of the very few officials in Chinese history who could stand at the absolute pinnacle of power yet land safely, and managed to end his career gracefully. He managed this through extraordinary political wisdom and a remarkably restrained character. A battlefield story from 123 BC illustrates just how formidable his intellect was. During that expedition, 2 of his subordinate commanders, General of the Right Su Jian and Vanguard Jiao Xin, ran right into the Chanyu's main force of tens of thousands. After a brutal day and night of fighting, the Han forces were wiped out. Jiao Xin, a Xiongnu defector to begin with, surrendered to save his skin. But Su Jian fought to his last ounce of strength and escaped back to Wei Qing's camp alone. Covered in blood, losing an entire army was a capital offense under strict military law. Wei Qing immediately convened his officers to discuss Su Jian's fate. Military officials vehemently urged him to execute Su Jian outside the camp gates to establish his absolute authority, noting he had never executed a high-ranking officer. However, another official argued against killing a man who fought against massive odds, because it would only discourage future soldiers from fighting to the death. Armed with the emperor's authorization to execute first, Wei Qing faced a dilemma. After a moment of silence, he delivered a response that won over everyone and provided immense relief to Emperor Wu. Wei Qing stated he was a man of humble origins and had reached his position entirely through the emperor's grace. He didn't need to build authority by shedding the blood of his generals. He argued that, while he held the power of life and death abroad, exercising it independently was a grave taboo for a minister. He decided to send Su Jian back to Chang'an, a prison cart, leaving the final judgment entirely up to the emperor. This move perfectly demonstrated his absolute loyalty, proving he wouldn't monopolize power, while also reinforcing the emperor's supreme authority. Emperor Wu spared Su Jian's life, stripping him of his rank instead, and his trust in Wei Qing became utterly unshakable. In the face of maddening power, countless men fall. But Wei Qing remained sober. He kept no retainers and avoided forming political factions with court officials. When faced with the flattery of courtiers, would simply reply, "My only job is to lead troops in battle. Governing the country is the prime minister's concern." He never envied the merits of others, and was incredibly kind to his soldiers. In the face of hardship, he was always the first to charge, during rests, even if there was only one well in a drought. The Grand Marshal wouldn't drink until his men had water, nor would he touch his food until his soldiers had eaten. This was the real Wei Qing, his character as steady as a towering mountain and as accommodating as flowing water. Understanding him is understanding what it truly means to be a peerless patriot. Later generations love to compare Wei Qing to his brilliant nephew, Heshuo. Heshuo was like a dazzling meteor streaking across the sky, a dangerously sharp sword who famously declared, "How can I think of a home when the Xiongnu aren't yet destroyed," radiating the arrogant brilliance of youth. Wei Qing, on the other hand, was like the silent, massive, Great Wall, an indestructible bastion of the empire. He may not have had a flamboyant personality, but over those long and cruel years, he single-handedly supported the military framework, and personally mentored a generation of outstanding generals, including Heshuo. Looking at his life, it is a true legendary tale of reversing one's fate. From a nameless, abused bastard and stable boy, he walked step by step through blood to the very pinnacle of the empire. Yet, even at the height of his power, you couldn't find a trace of arrogance. The grand historian Sima Qian described him as gentle, accommodating, and compliant. In the ruthless arena of court politics, this was not an insult, but a heartbreakingly poignant restraint. Gentleness. To avoid arousing the suspicious emperor's jealousy, he lived in seclusion in his twilight years, enduring the premature death of his nephew Heshuo, and the fading favor of his sister Wei Zifu. He silently bore the weight and sorrow of his entire family. He stood guard for this massive empire until his very last breath, when Grand Marshal Wei Qing passed away in 106 BC. A heartbroken Emperor Wu ordered his tomb to be built like Mount Lu, a mountain located right in Xiongnu territory, so he could rest eternally beside the mausoleum, sovereign and subject, side by side. Over 2,000 years have passed in the blink of an eye, and the desert sands have long buried the flashing swords of that era. But whenever we unroll the scrolls of history, magnificent silhouette of the man leading massive armies through the scorching desert, and the humble gentleman in the imperial court remain as vivid as ever. He was not just a decisive god of war who struck terror into foreign invaders. He was a great soul who blossomed brilliantly from the mud of hardship, maintaining a profound sense of reverence even at the absolute peak of power. He was Wei Qing, the eternal guardian deity of the Han Dynasty.